We're going to be making some further changes to harvest crafting with the release of 3.14 in April. In short, we're concerned by how deterministic some harvest crafts are, and how easily players can craft near perfect items. We don't feel that this is consistent with how Path of Exile's itemization should work. Before we detail what changes are coming, we want to explain a bit about Harvest's initial implementation, our design philosophy around items and crafting. Our initial plan for Harvest crafting, using currency items like Exalted Orbs or Chaos Orbs in your gear, is a powerful, risky, and exciting way to improve it. But because these items work equally well on both low and high level equipment, it's generally considered best to save them until you're crafting your endgame gear. Many players would even argue that it's best to save them to trade for already crafted items. In either case, using valuable currency items on your leveling gear is generally perceived to be non-optimal. When we were designing the crafting mechanics that would be the reward system for Harvest League, we wanted to experiment with a system that allowed you to craft items while leveling, and then they took this out of the leveling completely, using the equivalent of powerful currency like Exalted Orbs so that players could get the experience of using valuable currency items without feeling bad that they were missing out on future value. Our goal was to make a system that was so attractive that players would try to improve their items by throwing a few crafts at them in almost every area that they play. Towards the end of Harvest development, it became clear that this was a very powerful crafting system. We had hit our goals and then some. The question was whether we should preemptively nerf it before players saw it, or try it out for a league at full strength. We decided to try it out. The data we'd get from players interacting with a very powerful crafting mechanic would be very helpful with our ongoing work deciding the appropriate power level of crafting opportunities in PoE 2, which is what I've been telling everyone. We're literally in beta of PoE 2, and nobody sees it except for me, because I'm ahead of everyone. So we launched with the powerful version of the system, including some crafts that modified items in some more specific, deterministic ways than we had allowed before. Upon playing the league, the crafting side of it was an immediate hit. Players easily filled gaps in their build while leveling and made many mirror-worthy items. As our concern over this grew, discussion started about how to adjust things when we eventually integrated into the core game. Holy fuck. Okay, here we go. Integrating Harvest crafting into the core game. We decided to integrate Harvest into the core game as map-only content. Harvest crafting while leveling went fine during the Harvest League, but pretty much every league has some item acquisition mechanic that occurs while leveling, so we didn't think it was necessary to have Harvest on top. In the end game, Harvest crafting allowed the creation of some ridiculous items, mostly via a set of deterministic crafts that interacted with specific types of mods. This had to be toned down, and we had to choose between two ways to do it, either by removing the dangerous crafts or by keeping them in as rare possibilities and balancing by rarity. We decided to do the latter. The good crafts would stay in the game as a very rare outcome. We didn't remove any crafting options other than ones that related to the process of growing a garden, as they became redundant with the garden maintenance mechanic being removed. Just read the changes. You don't need to read all the BS. No, I need the BS first, so I see their spin on it. Okay, so in 3.13, we released an integrated version of Harvest where players stumble across groves full of crafts and hope they get the most valuable deterministic ones. We hope that this would still keep the most valuable crafting options available while limiting the most abusive crafting to just very lucky or successful players. You're gonna get slapped anyway? Analysis of integration into the core game. With Harvest integrated into the core game with 3.13, players still made ridiculous items. Even the crafts we made quite rare felt pretty common when the entire community was pulling them together and using them on the right items. The second issue was that players felt overwhelmed to get so many crafting options. It was possible for up to 100 or so crafts to be given to the player per grove, and this caused people to feel obliged to consume them, otherwise they would be wasted. True, I didn't give a fuck. The result of both of these factors was that players had access to basically unlimited medium power crafting and had to RNG hunt the best crafts, which they could then store for later. This is actually true, and I said fuck that shit. That's not that fun. I did do that for a while on cluster jewels and all the shield. Originally, I crafted some basic shit with Harvest, but like, honestly, it was AIDS. Players also expressed frustration that the most effective way to get the best items in PoE was to join a Discord channel and try to trade for these incredibly crucial crafts. Yep. The first part of this that concerned us was Harvest. It was critical in making the best items, and hence made many other game systems obsolete. Yep. The second part was it was inconvenient to trade them. Becomes far less of a problem if we solve the first issue. A problem with all of this can be summarized with the following thought. Why would I use a regular Exalted Divine and Null when I could just get a Harvest one that has a deterministic result? Yep. The entire rest of Path of Exile's crafting system is somewhat redundant with Harvest crafting in its current form. While we were glad we tried the experiment of keeping all the crafts and balancing by rarity, it's unfortunate going to have to change. So instead of fixing all of the problems that you just told us about and how Harvest fixes all of the problems and Harvest is the solution and that's why we chose Harvest over it, you're removing it. And we're going back to this shit system where I can't make my build. And it sucks to make items. And it feels fucking terrible. And currency is useless. And we all just gamble. And gambling even feels useless. Because currency will be delirium all over again. At its core, Path of Exile is a game about the acquisition of powerful items. When we were designing Path of Exile, a critical aspect of item acquisition is that it's through random rather than deterministic means. Wait, so then why is there a crafting bench? When you defeat monsters and bosses, you receive random items. When you approach Kadiro for a valuable item, you're offered a random one. Wait, so this is basically telling us we're supposed to be Path of Exile of items and not these really complex crafted things, because crafting is clearly not how the game is supposed to be. It's too deterministic. When you craft an item, you receive a random modifier. In limited cases where you can choose a specific modifier, it's usually worse than what could have been rolled randomly. Even game systems specifically intended to involve determinism, such as divination cards and incubators, still have amounts of luck involved. I'm so confused. It's also important that items are hard to perfect. Ideally, there's significant diminishing returns in the currency item crafting process, which lets most players get something good enough relatively easy, and the expert players can show off with really good items that took a lot of effort to make. Obtaining perfect items is ideally close to impossible, with very few players able to claim that they have such valuable treasures. We feel that the current state of harvest crafting runs against both of these important philosophies. We know that many players would love us to keep deterministic crafting in the game, because it enables them to complete their items far more quickly than they would otherwise, but then there would quickly be nothing left to achieve. It was an interesting experiment, and we understand that some players will likely be attached to this level of incredibly easy crafting, but it's not the Path of Exile we set out to make. This sentiment was summed up by a member of our design team who recently said, "We don't want to take away the feeling of closing your eyes and exalting an item, scared to see whether you ruined it or not." Upcoming changes. So in 3.14, we're making some changes. The first three are direct nerfs to Harvest, and the second two are improvements. Wait, so we still have Harvest? It's also worth noting that Harvest Atlas passives have been adjusted to accommodate. Previously, every seed in a patch granted an instance of that seed's craft. Now only some of the seeds do, so you're getting far fewer crafts. Higher tier seeds are closer to the 1-1 ratio from before. Some mods that had overly deterministic behavior have been removed. These include all annulment mods, other than the ones that remove a mod that isn't a specific type before adding one of that type. So none add that one. Okay. Craft that add mods of specific types like physical, for example, to items can now only be applied to non-influenced items except for the existing mod that applies an influenced mod to an item. What? The chance of encountering a portal to the Sacred Grove in a map has been increased by 60%. The Heart of the Grove encounter is now a map fragment that sometimes drops from tier 4 harvest bosses instead of randomly appearing in place of a normal harvest grove. That's so good. This allows you to trade the encounter if you don't feel up to it. It means that finding the Heart of the Grove when you're in a map with difficult mods doesn't lead to an impossible encounter. Well, you can't find a Heart of the Grove. Overall, this is undoubtedly heavy nerf to high-end harvest crafting, and we strongly believe that it is Path of Exile's best interest going forward, and that there are still a lot of compelling harvest crafts that make the grove worth running at any point in map progression. Now go to Reddit and downvote. Holy shit, man. Okay, wait, let's think about something. Does this make Awakener orbs better and Maven orbs better again? And maybe another upcoming crafting method is coming? Dude, what the fuck is that post, man? Rip Harvest. Let's go, I gotta go take my thing, one sec. Gotta be a good YouTuber. Hold up, man.